Check 1, 2. All right, so this is what we are going to do next with our contour line images and our op art. We're going to do a combination of both. So for this to work, we really need to have both files open in Adobe Illustrator at the same time. Now, this is what the finished product would look like. This is where the op art came from the op art groups. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this in a fresh file. So I will hide this layer that has the op art on it, and I'm going to make a new layer, and as long as that new layer comes in underneath my contour line drawing, I will be happy. So I'm going to lock the contour line drawing layer because we're really not going to change that at the moment. Okay, now I need to get my op art into here. So I'm going to go to the op art groups, and maybe I'll select this one. Okay, I'll press Control C or go to Edit Copy, and then when I toggle over by hitting the tab for the contour line, as long as I'm selected on layer 4, I can go to Edit Paste, and it pastes it right in there. Now, this is a pretty high contrast and dark op art group, and it's also a little small. So I'm going to right click and go to Transform Scale and choose something about 250%. Let's see what that looks like. Ooh, I'm going to have to go a little larger. Let's try 300%. Hit the tab key. Looks like 325 will work. Okay. Let's just go to an even 400. There we go. That's definitely big enough to fill the canvas. I'll click OK. And then I'm going to choose Deselect because I kind of want to take a look at it. I think it'll be a more interesting composition if I move this into place, maybe behind my eye. Also, I don't have to have a dark color applied to the fill of my op art, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it as is because the trick that I'm going to show you today really involves creating a silhouette behind your figure to make the op art more visible. So, if I want to make this a little more visible to work with, I could select it and maybe lower my opacity to 50%. And that lets me kind of see it all at once. And I want to make sure that I follow the steps. So I'm going to zoom in kind of on the edge here and then toggle back over with the Alt and Tab keys to look at the instructions. So we've copied from contour or from op art, pasted into contour, and we've adjusted our scale. Okay, but what we want to do is lock both the drawing and the op art. Okay, we may unlock them later, but for now we're going to lock them. So I'm going to go ahead and select with my selection arrow the entire op art group, and I will go to Object, Lock, Selection, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Control 2. Okay, so now I have both a locked drawing and a locked op art. What I'm going to do now is use a new tool called the Blob Brush. If you click and hold on the paintbrush, you can select the Blob Brush, and if I'm on my op art layer, my Blob Brush currently is really big. I'm going to double check my settings by double clicking the tool icon, and I always skew toward accuracy. Keeping selected is very important. Now the starting size doesn't really matter too much because we're going to use the bracket keys to adjust it as we go. So I will click OK, and right now my fill color is yellow. Let's see if that gives me a yellow blob. Okay, it did. Alright, I can't tell if my blob is underneath or on top. No, it's on top. Is the blob itself at 50% opacity? I'm not going to worry about it for right now. In fact, maybe I'll switch my color, keep blob painting, and you can see because we used that selection keep selected, basically anytime we paint more blob, it will add to the existing blob we painted. So I'm going to use the hand tool or use the shortcut of the space bar to get the hand tool so I can navigate around, and I want to basically fill in a rough silhouette. It's okay to paint outside the lines for right now. We're looking to really quickly separate the op art from the figure. Now we may choose later on to have the op art be visible inside the figure, but for right now we just want to kind of have a rough silhouette, almost like a background for our portrait. Okay, Now once I'm done, I'm going to press Control 0 to zoom back out. This is a little excessive. It's a little more than I want, but the next step in the handout tells us we want to clean up the background using the brush tool. Okay, now there's a reminder here. You can increase or decrease the size of both the blob brush and also the eraser using the same bracket keyboard shortcuts. Those are the brackets right up next to backspace and enter. They're going to change the size of your brush or your eraser. So what we want to do is use this eraser tool and zoom in and use the hand tool or the space bar while we're on the blob brush to navigate around and kind of clean up these edges. Okay, so what I like to do is hit Control plus or use the zoom tool to zoom in on a particular area. Then I am a big fan of keyboard shortcuts, so I usually hit the space bar to get the the hand tool. You can press the letter H and that will change it. But if you learn the shortcuts, you'll be able to work much more quickly. Now we need to use the eraser. The eraser is located right here, and the keyboard shortcut for that is Shift+E. So I'm going to press Shift+E on my keyboard. I've got the eraser. It's currently a little small. That's good for getting in these little nooks and crannies, but to remove large amounts of area, it's a lot easier to use a larger brush. So I will scale this up, clicking the right hand bracket key, and as long as I don't go too far inside the stroke area of my drawing, I'll be able to kind of click and remove large portions of the excess silhouette. Okay, now if I mess up and go in here, I can just press Control Z to undo, or I could use my blob brush to paint it back on. There's a lot of ways to accomplish our goal, but I think what I'm going to do is kind of use I'm using my mouse wheel right now to quickly kind of scroll upward, but if I hold the space bar, I can move side to side, in and out. There's also something, I don't mention this in the handout, but there's something called the navigator. If you ask for the navigator under the window panel, it will show you kind of a small version of your entire document. And this little red box represents the area that we're currently zoomed on. So I can go in here and grab a little too much, but I think I'll just be a little more careful this time. I hit undo, brought that back. Now you're probably going to have a few gaps in your silhouette. That's okay. If your drawing doesn't have a continuous line around it, that's not unusual. Do your best guess to figure out where the figure would need background. And ultimately this is your artwork, so the choices will be up to you. Just do your best to get a nice clean edge. Okay. Again, as long as my brush preview doesn't go inside of the figure, I think I'm going to be satisfied with the result. So I will quickly and carefully kind of just cruise through here. And again, the biggest brush you can get away with makes this easier. So I'm just kind of moving and clicking, moving and clicking. Now if I were to hide the contour line drawing, the silhouette's not going to look that great. It only looks good when used in concert with the line drawing, but that's okay. All right, it's going to enable us to work a lot more quickly when we do it this way. Okay, so I will zoom out a touch. Ooh, somehow I ended up centered on my face. You can see we're cleaning up some of the areas. All right, I've got a little more to clean up, so Shift+E, scale this up, click and move, click and move. All right, again, as long as I'm not overlapping with my interior space, I'll be able to clean it up fairly quickly. And then I can zoom in to take care of some of the finer points. Okay, so let's do that. Control plus, zoom it in, space bar to get the hand to scooch over. Okay, bracket key on the left makes the brush smaller. Bracket key on the right makes the brush larger. Okay, so I'm just trying to take care of all these little adjustments here. Got some little tiny notches to take care of. Again, I do like using the largest brush possible, so I end up clicking the bracket keys an awful lot during this. Clean that up. Clean that up. Alright, got a little corner in here. I'm going to have to go much smaller. Come down, pick that up. And one of the reasons I like the big brush is it's kind of easier to see where I'm painting and where I'm not. Okay, I took away a little too much there. I could use my Blob Brush, scale that down, to add a little more into it. Okay, Shift+E to go back to the eraser. So the keyboard shortcuts for this one don't really have a parallel in Photoshop, but that's okay. It's Shift+B for the Blob Brush and Shift+E for the eraser. Once you get used to those, they're pretty powerful. So I'm going to go around. Again, I'm doing a kind of quick and dirty version of this. I took away a little too much, so I'm Shift+B to get the Blob Brush back. Okay, good. Shift+E to go back to the eraser. And again, if I'm careful, I'm working quickly a little bit because it's a demonstration, but if I'm careful to make sure that my circle doesn't intrude beyond the black line, I ought to be pretty satisfied with my results. So one technique would be to go around and take care of all of the big, really obvious overlaps, and then go back with a smaller brush to take care of the little nooks and corner areas. Scale that down just a touch. And before you know it, we'll be done and we'll be able to make some decisions about what our final image is going to look like. So, oops, I hit P instead of the bracket key. That put me on the pen tool. I don't want that, so I'm going to hit Shift+B to get my Blob Brush back, and then scale down my brush size. Whoops, sorry, Shift+E, because I want the eraser. Scale it back up. I'm hitting this rapidly, probably half a dozen to a dozen times, because again, I feel like it's more efficient to use the largest brush you can kind of safely get away with. It'll remove the material more quickly. Space bar gives us the hand, and I'm just kind of cruising around using the bottom or outside edge of my eraser to go along the contour line drawing. Now, if I didn't lock down the contour line drawing, it's possible I could end up erasing it. So that step where we lock both the op art and the contour line drawing, it's a pretty important one. If you accidentally erase from your figure, just make sure that you hit undo until you get back to the prior version. And I think that overall it's a pretty basic concept. We're layering 3 different images together. 2 that we've already created, and then we're kind of creating the 3rd in between, which is the loose silhouette. And gang, we are really, really close to being done. So let me scale this down. Let's get this down, try to get this last little nook. I'm gonna zoom it out. I have a couple little nooks over here on the far side, but I'm really, really close. So what I'm going to do is go to File and tell it to save as, because this is a somewhat separate file from my contour line. I'm going to call it contour line and op art combo. Alright, so how I choose to make this appear from here on out is going to be kind of up to me. My op art has green in it, so I have a green background, but I could also play around with changing those background color choices. I could even change the op art, although hopefully you will select an op art group that you've previously made that you like the look of, so that you won't want to make changes. You certainly can. There's no reason you couldn't. So let me go through, make sure I clean up all the last little nooks. You guys see a little something sticking up there. Alright, I think I'm pretty much good to go. So I'm going to save it. Now, one of the things that's happening is I previously locked down here my op art group. I'm going to unlock it, select it, and then just take the, ooh, my navigator's in the way. Let me just slide that to the side. I'll take my op art group and ask it to be 100% transparency. Hopefully that will work. Maybe it was the entire layer. Let's see, double click, select the path, op art group. I really would like to get the opacity back up and deselect 100, 100. We'll change it to overlay. Nope, no scene difference. Alright. I'll turn on the eyeball for both. Now, I could choose to have the op art appear only inside of my figure. Now, I could obviously save it as is, but if I wanted the op art only inside the figure, I can select my silhouette and then hold Shift and select my group. And then if I right click and choose Make Clipping Mask, it only shows the op art inside the figure. That's kind of a cool look. The other option would be, if I hit undo to release that, the other option would be having less than 100% opacity for my silhouette. So this green could be knocked down to 50, and then I could see them both at the same time. Now that will appear differently if my green is, say, yellow or even red. You know, I could pick a host of different colors, and that's going to alter how the mix is interpreted. You also have the option of going from normal to multiply or screen mode, and any color that you select will give you a different end result. So maybe I like yellow in screen mode at 50%, overlapping with my op art. Let's see, select deselect. It's kind of cool looking. I'm going to hit Control S to save it and go to export as, and I'm going to save it as a JPEG, tell it to use the artboards, and I'm going to put it in my desktop digital art demo folder. So contour line and op art combo demo, that's a perfectly good name. You guys obviously can name it whatever you like. As always, max out your quality and choose high resolution when you're exporting. You can export in RGB mode or CMYK mode. Either one will be fine. But also, if you want to make a few variations on this, I encourage you to do so. So you could change your color and your opacity back to normal. Okay, maybe you want to have a version that looks like this. File, export as. Okay, we'll do another JPEG. But this time I'll just put a little V2 at the end for version 2. Right, keep all those settings the same. Right, maybe I want to export a version that has the clipping mask activated, so I'm going to click to select my yellow silhouette and then shift click to select my group as well, which allows me to make the clipping mask. And then I could take a rectangle and make a big rectangle, and I'm going to send this rectangle to the back. So I just have to click and drag it in the layers window underneath, or I can right click on it and do arrange, send to back. Now from there, if I really like the way this looks, fantastic. If I want to put a gradient on this, I have the option to do that. Maybe I'll have it go 90 degrees. Whoop, that is 60 degrees. We'll go 90 degrees. Right, I can alter the colors, drag some new colors in. If I want to fade from green to yellow, or go in reverse. Let's see, what other choices do I have? I could hit the letter G with the gradient tool, click and drag it. There's a lot of things I could play with. Okay, so when you have a version that you like, save and export.